You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the boss has crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
Who said it? Kanye West or Thomas
we
Paine?
will not raw dog reality for that one.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
The Scab Buster.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
Keep together strong. Let that be your mantra. Some people in the labor sphere might possibly...
Trademark, patented, reserved.
Yes. Might be aware of this thing called the AFL CIO.
Ooh. The AFL-CIO.
The AFL-CIO. This is the American Federation of Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations.
Yes.
And you might notice that there's an "and" in the middle there, because this is two organizations that kind of smushed together.
Ooh, we're learning about the birds and the bees today.
Yes.
A true union.
And like man and woman, one of these was formed from the rib of the other.
Damn, we going way back in Genesis, baby. Well, this is the genesis of the AFL-CIO.
Exactly. We're going to be learning how the CIO was formed.
Okay.
Specifically, the 1935 AFL Convention in Atlantic City, New Jersey.
AC. Okay.
And to start, we're going to do a little bit of backstory.
Of course we are.
With a speed run of Sam Gompers and how the AFL came to be. Because in order to understand the CIO, you have to understand the AFL, because they're like, the AFL formed, or the CIO formed out of the AFL because of issues. So
okay.
Sam Gompers, yeah.
Because of issues.
Sam Gompers, or Samuel Gompers, was a working class Jewish Dutch boy.
Damn.
Who had moved to, or came to London, or his parents came to London. So he grew up in like the working class Jewish neighborhoods in London. At 10 years old, he started working alongside his father as an apprentice cigar maker.
All right.
And then at the age of 13, moved to New York City and continued working as a cigar maker, and eventually joined United Cigar Makers Local Number 15.
I remember this guy.
Yep. And at Local 15, he met a bunch of socialists and labor agitators, which kind of got him interested in initially got him into like the more radical side of unionism in the mid-19th century.
The fun side.
Yeah. Now, it was also during this time that he witnessed some of the like more violent riots and labor protests that happened, and specifically saw the cops coming in and destroying all of the workers.
I wonder how he felt about that.
Yeah, so usually there's kind of two responses to this. One is you see that and it makes you really, really mad, and you end up being like, okay, we need to be more radical and make sure that doesn't happen in the future. The other response is, this is inevitable, and we should make sure that we don't have violent strikes anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Gompers took the second route.
Okay.
And he kind of dedicated himself to I would say, like, reformist craft unionism is probably the best way to explain it.
All right.
That he very much wanted, rather than the, like, universal, almost industrial unionism that the Knights of Labor espoused in this period, he very much wanted every trade to have its own union, and thought that skilled workers were really the epitome of working class power, because they had the most power on the shop floor.
All right, Sammy. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
there was a hidden third option where he could just have been like, you know what, we need more cops.
This is true. It could have been slightly worse than it was. I don't know if Gompers ever wrote about police unions. I don't know if they were a thing during his lifetime.
Oh, that would have been an interesting thing to hear about his opinion on that, though.
Because he also and craft unionists at this time were also like they didn't like the government getting involved in this at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted unions to represent basically like white skilled labor, and then that organization of workers would fight for their own benefit and their own rights. And they didn't want the government regulating it, and they didn't want the bosses regulating it. It was just that specific little group of workers was going to do their own thing.
Yeah.
That was kind of the world that Gompers was coming up in. And he was moving up in the labor sphere, and eventually got into the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions in 1881, or he helped to found it.
Oh, okay.
So he served as the vice president of the FOTLU,
What?
PLU, the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions. But he eventually reorganized that into the American Federation of Labor.
Ah, there you go.
Presumably because
of FOTLU.
Yeah, FOTLU was just too weird to say. But AFL kind of rolls off the tongue.
I don't know. It could have been the FOTLU CIO today, Gabe.
That's true.
Yeah.
Created the AFL in 1886, and it basically espoused the general craft unionism that he fought for, or that he believed in. And there was they kept kind of flirting with the idea of doing more industrial organizing. And a lot of the times this was like, should we let black people and immigrants join the union? And occasionally they would, or like on paper, they would say like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but we're also not going to tell any of the very racist locals that they have to not be racist.
Yeah, right. I like that they're experimenting with morality, though. That's nice.
Yeah. It's that old, like, enlightened slave owner thing of, like, I know what I'm doing is bad, but what am I gonna do?
It's all for the greater good.
Yeah. In addition to, like, the kind of, I would say, strategic or tactical racism that he occasionally espoused. He also believed in unionism, pure and simple. And that was basically unions should just fight for wages, hours, and conditions, and everything else should be left up to political organizations. And yeah.
Not sold on old Sammy boy.
Yeah, he did some good stuff.
I mean, he did. I mean, no, it's okay. I mean, he's up to a point, you know. I mean,
yeah,
we're just too radical, Gabe. I think that's what it is.
Clearly, we want people to like have a decent life, and we want everyone to have a decent life, which is the problem. But that mindset of unionism, pure and simple, and craft unionism really was just deeply ingrained in the AFL. And while they did allow some more industrial style unions to come in, especially like the mine workers and the needle trades, who will become very important later on, they still kept that very like craft superiority. So you might have, you'd have like these other unions able to vote within the AFL and have some like modicum of influence. All of the craft union delegates would always vote in a block against them.
Okay.
And then you also have stuff where like they would put black workers in what were called federal locals. The federated locals were basically like they would force black workers into an auxiliary that theoretically had like some power on the job, but didn't have any voting rights within the union as a whole.
Of
And it was
course.
like, yeah.
Of course.
And it was just the constant thing of like, yeah, we're going to do something for black folks, but it's going to be the absolute bare minimum and just serve to actually weaken any power they might have.
But it looks good on paper, Gabe.
Yeah, that's the real thing. So Gompers died in 1924 after 38 years as president of the AFL.
Okay.
And
Damn.
basically, and basically his belief in how unionism should operate like outlived past him.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, to a certain extent, still exists today. I don't think you get as much of the like craft unionism vibe specifically, but there are definitely a lot of people who have the like unionism pure and simple mindset that unions should just focus on.
There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah. And I think the outside of the labor movement, I think there's a lot of people that still have the craft union mentality of like carpenters and electricians need unions, but baristas don't.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
It's such an old school mindset.
Yeah. Like it's literally over 150 years old. Like, if not, honestly, it's almost 200 years old.
Yeah.
But now we're going to talk about, I don't want to say like a more fun character, but
how can you get more fun than old Sammy?
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about John Llewellyn Lewis.
Oh, shit.
Who surprisingly is Welsh. Or was born to a Welsh miner.
Surprisingly, most Welsh people are Welsh.
Yes. By the name of Tom Lewis and Anne Watkins, who is the daughter of a Mormon minister in Cleveland in 1880. So Lewis had 10 years of formal schooling before going down to be a miner, which is like surprisingly a lot. So he was, with all of that advanced schooling, he very quickly became the recording secretary for UMW Local 1933, which that, again, when we have 4-digit locals, it always throws me off because I think it's a date. And I was reading over his biography like 4 times because I kept thinking, like, how did we get to 1933? But
the magic of the labor sphere, Gabe.
Yeah. So Lewis started getting involved in organizing at that point.
Okay.
And like started to move up within the union. And between 1901 and 1905, he started traveling around just the West on trains. It was unclear like what work he was doing at this point, but
hobo.
Yeah,
it was
effectively. So yeah, he spent 4 years hoboing, and got a firsthand account of his experience of basically what like poverty actually looked like in the U.S. Then, after 4 years of experiencing poverty, he decided he didn't want to anymore, and came back to Iowa, where he got married in 1907 and then moved to Panama, Illinois, where he became the president of UMWA, or United Mine Workers of America. I realized I didn't mention what UMWA is. UMWA Local 1475. He started organizing again because, he was the president of a union local, so he should probably do some organizing.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
On the side.
But he also started lobbying the Illinois legislature to pass mine safety laws and protections for miners.
Okay.
So this, like, that was one of the first major distinctions that I found between him and Gompers. That like the moment he had any kind of union or political clout, he immediately started lobbying for safety.
He used it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that caught the attention of Sam Gompers.
Oh, God.
Who made Lewis a national organizer with the AFL from 1910 to 1916, which put him kind of on the fast track within AFL to move up the ranks. And that led him to becoming the Mine Workers International Statistician, which is a great title.
All right.
Which is basically, he was the secretary for the International.
That's
so
cool.
He would like keep a record of all of the people joining, get an idea of how many people they have, and then also help with organizing strike support and stuff like that.
Sure. Whatever gets you out of the mines.
Yeah. It's a question I hadn't answered, is whether or not Gompers spent more time actually working than Lewis did. Because I think he may have.
Then a Welsh miner? I don't know about that, Gabe.
Yeah, Lewis very quickly got out of the mines.
I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah. So he eventually became president of the mine workers in 1920, which at the time was one of the largest and one of the strongest unions in the country.
Oh, okay.
And one of his first things was leading the entire union through a 5-month-long strike.
Damn.
Trying to maintain some of the wage gains from World War I. And while he was doing this, he also solidified his power within the UMWA with some questionable tactics.
Okay. What happened during this 5-month strike, Gabe?
Well, this is something that he became well known for, like throughout his entire time as president.
Okay.
He liked to use strong arm tactics, and arguably there were some suggestions of like ballot stuffing and election rigging.
Oh God!
To keep him in power. So this especially comes up when we get into the fun politics of the 20s, where you have both socialists and communists trying to make gains within, or make inroads in labor organizations. And Lewis immediately viewed them as a threat to his power.
Yeah.
So he basically spent the whole of the 20s, like every opportunity he got, stamping down on anyone vaguely left of him.
Just red baiting.
Yeah. Just constantly.
Yeah.
And he was also like a staunch Republican the entire time.
Okay.
And this was before the party shift in the 60s, but it was still like Republicans were still kind of the free trade party.
Mm-hmm.
So he would like, while he was the head of one of the largest unions in the country, he was still also very much like, yeah, but this very capitalist political party, that's where I'm going to be voting. So by 1928, he basically cleared the UMWA of any leftist opposition.
Oh God.
And he was effectively its dictator.
Yeah. Not a fan.
And yeah. And like, on the one hand, he was good at his job. He was a good union president and kept the UMWA functioning, and like the union coffers were very full.
Yeah.
That being said, he did that through some questionable tactics.
Means, yes.
Yeah. So complicated characters. Exactly.
Damn, Frank RZA just dropped by.
Yeah. So despite being a lifelong Republican, though, Lewis recognized that there was a political advantage to supporting FDR in 32.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically through the full support of the UMWA behind FDR. And then after the National Industrial Recovery Act was passed in 1933, he almost used the entire UMWA treasury into in an organizing drive, which resulted in over 90% of the mines in the US being organized.
Wow.
Within like a year or two.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Damn. Sean Fain should. Well, not. He shouldn't take everything from this guy, but a couple of these things maybe would help him down in the South.
Yeah.
You gotta stuff those ballots. That's what it is.
They're
taking the high road too many times. They're taking the high road. God damn it! Have we not learned anything from Hillary?
Exactly.
You never take the high road.
Got to fight tooth and nail.
Pokemon Go stuff the ballot box.
Pokemon Go grab your tire iron.
How about 100% against that? Depends on where we're headed.
If it works, it works.
Hey, yeah, it works for him.
Yeah. The Labor John podcast does not condone violence of any kind.
We don't want to lose our all that money we're getting from our sponsorships.
Yeah.
Like the Heritage Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yep.
We hit them all.
Yep. None of them respond, but we ask for money constantly.
George Soros has not responded to my tweets.
I'll talk to him about it
in at least a week. I hope he's okay.
Yeah. I'll check up on him in the next cabal meeting, so make sure he's okay. So
all right, so 90% of the mines. That's crazy.
Yeah. So massive mine worker organizing, and then we get into the like early National Recovery Act worker militancy. Because it didn't actually give anyone any real federal support, but it was Section 7A of the Act that just said like workers have the right to form a union, and that was it. And
was that in quotation marks?
It might as well have been, because there was no like explanation beyond that. It's just you can maybe possibly do this, but even that was so far beyond what the federal government had been doing previously. Especially with miners. So,
which was what, either nothing or shooting at them?
Yes, effectively.
Okay. All right.
So you ended up with a massive strike wave, especially in industrial and quote unquote unskilled labor. So lots of factory workers, like rank and file laborers, miners, and all of these strikes were happening throughout the 30s. And that, in combination with the UMWA's organizing campaign, started to convince some people that the AFL needs to start doing industrial organizing. And like Lewis really starts beating this drum, being like, hey, if we're going to survive this, we need to, like, there's an opening, we need to seize this right now.
Okay.
And so he started bringing this up every chance he got, and was petitioning the AFL Executive Council to start organizing all of the unorganized industrial workers. Of course, the craft union leadership was very hostile to the idea. But finally, in 1934, a resolution passed which ostensibly pledged support for industrial organizing and expanded the Executive Council to allow non-craft union people to come in.
Okay.
So you had Lewis and I think 2 guys from the needle trades as well. And so they were like this little mini committee on the Executive Council that was
They were just like really pushing for it.
Yeah, especially in rubber, or especially pushing for organizing in rubber and steel. There was also a lot of independent unionism that was cropping up in rubber and steel,
Okay.
or in a lot of these industries. So you're starting to see all of that, or like the groundwork happening. Lewis and the other guys or his little team on the executive council were basically saying like, hey, this is going to happen. We need to capitalize on it.
Yeah, now's the time.
Yeah. He kept fighting for this, basically kept getting ignored. Then that all came to a head in 35 with the 1935 AFL Convention. And Lewis would have an opportunity to speak to the entire body, not just the executive council.
Oh, here we go.
Because he wanted to get everyone on board to do this so that he could force the executive council. There were other AFL union leaders who were supporting him. David Dubinsky of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and Sidney Hillman.
Sidney Hillman of what?
The Amalgamated Clothing Workers.
Gotcha.
ACWA. And these were also, both Dubinsky and Hillman were also super anti-communist.
Oh, God.
Even, they were like kind of more socialist. Like they were European Social Democrats is
Okay.
basically where they landed.
We need that distinction.
Yeah. So like Bernie, but really anti-communist, effectively. But they knew that industrial organizing was important. Now, while all of this is going on, Lewis is also starting to court the left again and like build ties with leftist organizers, because the communists and the socialists and the anarchists are the ones who are going out and doing the industrial organizing.
Yeah.
So he, like, despite literally spending the past decade and a half of his life to fighting these guys tooth and nail, now he's going back and being like, it's water under the bridge. Come work for me. Now, the convention opens on October 7th, and immediately Lewis and the Industrial Caucus starts pressuring the old guard to pass a resolution for industrial organizing.
Okay.
They proposed resolutions for industrial unionism, desegregation.
No.
But they kept getting shot down.
Yeah.
So, unsurprisingly, after 9 days of constantly making these proposals and getting shot down, on the 16th, the industrial unionism folks proposed a resolution which laid out not only that the AFL had historically failed to organize on an industrial basis, but that this could ultimately be the Federation's undoing if they didn't pursue industrial unionism at this juncture specifically, when it was the most advantageous time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So they laid out a whole report. They were thorough, and they crossed their T's and dotted their I's, and it was supposed to work. So this report was basically immediately rebutted by Matthew Wohl, who was the former president of the International Photo Engravers Union of North America.
What?
It's craft unions. Don't question it. It's craft unions. So Wohl came up and spoke after Lewis, and basically just like, and basically said that was nonsense. Then Lewis comes up and says, a year ago at San Francisco, I was a year younger, and naturally I had more faith in the executive council. I was beguiled into believing that an enlarged executive council would honestly interpret and administer this policy, the policy we talked about for 6 days in committee the policy of issuing charters for industrial unions in the mass production industries. But surely Delegate Wool would not hold it against me that I was so trusting at the time. I know better now. At San Francisco, they seduced me with fair words. Now, of course, having learned that I was seduced, I am enraged, and I am ready to rend my seducer's limb from limb.
Oh my God.
So the debates continued into the evening, with each speaker becoming more and more animated and angry. And finally, a vote was held. And despite the United Mine Workers, the brewery workers, the mine mill and smelter workers, the needle trades, and multiple state federations, city centrals, and the federal labor unions, all of them voting to support this bill or this resolution for industrial organizing, it was defeated 18,024 votes to 10,933.
Damn.
So now we head on to October 19th, where most of the discussion actually focused on desegregation in the AFL, with A. Philip Randolph, president of the Sleeping Car Porters Union, criticizing them for being still very racist.
Yeah, rightfully so.
And so he proposed a resolution calling for unions to take in Negro members, which he had been calling for 4 years at this point, and kept getting ignored. Then a delegate from the rubber workers, who were an industrial union, came up and proposed a question about the jurisdiction for his union. Will Hutchison, president of the Carpenters Union, stood up and called for a point of order to silence the rubber union delegate.
What is happening?
Basically, the guy from the rubber union was trying to like force the argument of whether or not craft unions actually exist. So he came up to the podium unscheduled. He basically just kind of came up and started talking.
It seems like the kind of thing you can just do at this thing. It's like anybody's talking.
I didn't put it in here because I couldn't find the exact quote, and it was bothering the hell out of me. But if I remember correctly, what happened was the guy from the rubber union was like talking, or was trying to figure out how to handle this, talking to Lewis. And Lewis basically just said, go up there and talk. No one's going to stop you. So he did. Yeah. So then Hutchison stands up and tries to shut up the guy the rubber worker.
Yeah.
And then Lewis responds to Hutchison by saying, this thing of raising points of order all the time on minor delegates is rather small potatoes. And demanded that the rubber worker was allowed to speak.
All right.
Hutchison, who was 6'3" and fairly rotund, responded by saying, eating small potatoes is what made him so damn big.
All right.
So the debate continued, and all the while Lewis quietly moved down the aisle towards Hutchison. And then the two men exchanged some more heated words.
Oh, God.
While the rest of the convention continued to debate whether or not rubber workers were allowed to exist. And then finally, Hutchison called Lewis a bastard.
Oh, God.
At which point, Lewis jumped to his feet, struck Hutchison squarely on the jaw, knocking him over and laying him out on the table.
Damn.
So he knocked him out with one, well, not knocked him out, but he laid him out flat with one punch. And then Hutchison gets back up and just a fist fight breaks out between these two 50-year-old union presidents in the middle of the AFL convention. So their aides and friends are like both trying to break them up, and others are just getting into another fight as well.
Point of order.
So a small brawl just kind of opens up in the middle of the convention. William Green, the president of the AFL, kept calling for order, but it took a couple minutes for the scuffle to break up. Then finally, both sides separated. Hutchison, who was fairly bloodied and beaten up, was escorted out of the room by his friends. Now, reportedly, Lewis calmly fixed his tie, relit his cigar, and sat back down at his desk.
Still with the cigars.
Yeah. So really what all of that was Lewis knew that he wasn't going to make any headway at the convention, but he needed an excuse and like a public spectacle to leave the AFL.
Yep.
So he goaded Hutchison into fighting with him.
Yeah, he was not leaving there without making some kind of noise.
Yeah. I will also say Lewis was probably the biggest drama queen in like early 20th century Union history, because good Lord, the man knew how to make a scene.
Yeah.
The convention ended by everyone, or the conservative members, shouting down a resolution to create an independent Labor Party, and passing a resolution to combat rising communism in the ranks of labor.
Yeah, sorry.
Normal stuff. But the important result was a very public split between the AFL and the industrial unionists. So the convention adjourns, but Lewis immediately sets to work organizing. And on November 9th, the Committee for Industrial Organization was formed in Washington, D.C., made up of Lewis from the United Mine Workers, Charles P. Howard of the International Typographical Union, Sidney Hillman of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers, David Dubinsky of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, Thomas F. McMahon of the United Textile Workers, Harvey C. Fremming of Oil Field, Gas Well, and Refinery Workers of America, Max Zarinsky of the Hatters, Cap, and Millinery Workers International Union, and Thomas H. Brown of the United Mine, Mill, and Smelter Workers of America.
You could have just told us who wasn't in this union.
This is only a small group of guys. The AFL has like 50,000 craft unions at this point. Because you have like the Typesetters Union, and then you have the Typesetters Cleaners Union,
of course,
and then you have the Typesetter Cleaner Organizer Union, who organize the toolboxes for the typesetters cleaners, who then clean the typeset after each printing. So these aren't actual unions, but I think there was a printers union, which was typesetters. Anyway, so these guys all pledged support for industrial organization and stated that they would use their own union coffers to create a quote-unquote war chest to support new industrial unions.
Okay.
The AFL responded on the 22nd by sending Lewis a 25-page rebuke written by President William Green, detailing why his new plan for industrial organizing would fail. 12 hours later, Lewis sent Green a letter stating, "Dear Sir and Brother, effective this date, I resign as Vice President of the American Federation of Labor. Sincerely yours, John L. Lewis."
All right.
And that's basically how the CIO got founded. They went on to do a lot more actual organizing, brought in a lot of like left-leaning organizers, and built up the industrial organizations.
Yeah.
And in a future episode, we will talk about the re-merger of the AFL and the CIO, and all of the interesting politics around that happening.
Oh no, I can't do any more interesting politics.